All right, today we're jumping into a really interesting question. What happens when you think of social work not just as a job, but as a calling? What is Christian social work, and what makes it so different?
So let's start with something we can probably all agree on. The world is complicated. It's messy. And social work, at its very core, is about stepping into that mess. It's about dealing with people who are in need, under incredible stress, the vulnerable or the excluded.
Okay, so if the world is a world in need, what's the actual goal here? Well, it's about trying to make sense of it all. The big idea is that if you can understand what's going on in someone's life, you can actually help them improve their well-being, find more freedom, and tackle the problems they're facing.
But how? How do you best do that? This is where things get really fascinating, because the field of social work itself is kind of split down the middle. There's this deep divide, what one thinker called the two cultures, and it leads to two totally different ways of thinking about helping people.
So on one hand, you've got the scientist. This person is all about clarity, certainty, and data. They rely on observation, measurement, evidence-based practices, things you can prove. But then on the other hand, you have the artist. This approach sees helping as this creative, human-to-human experience. It's guided by things that are harder to measure, right? Love, trust, our shared humanity. For the artist, raw human experience is what's real, not just the data.
So, which is it? Do you have to pick a side? Are you supposed to be a technician who explains things with cold, hard facts, or are you more of a fellow traveler, someone who just understands? It's a real tension. But what if there's another way to look at the whole thing? And that is the exact moment the Christian framework steps in. It doesn't try to solve the artist versus scientist debate. Instead, it offers a totally different starting point. It reframes the whole mission, not as a job you pick, but as a calling you answer. Yeah, the key word here is vocation. It comes from the Latin word vocatio, which means, you guessed it, a calling. This idea really got a new life during the Protestant Reformation. The thinking is that any honest work you do to help your neighbor is, in a way, sacred. It's a spiritual ministry. So it's way more than just a job. It's a summons from God to participate in His work. You see this laid out in the Bible in places like Ephesians, and this idea completely changes your motivation, right? Suddenly, your work isn't just a career path you kind of fell into. No, it's a purpose that was prepared for you ahead of time. It's this idea that there are good works that God has already set up for you to do.
Okay, so if the why is totally different, it's a calling, not just a job, then it makes sense that the what, the actual goal of the work, has to be different too.
We're not just talking about helping someone function a bit better, or just reducing their symptoms. The goal is something much deeper. It's the pursuit of shalom. Now, this is a Hebrew word that's so much bigger than just peace. It's about comprehensive well-being, being in a right relationship with God, with yourself, and with everyone around you. It's a vision for total flourishing.
And this is where the rubber really meets the road. Look at how this changes things. Your source of value isn't just some legal status. It's the imago Dei, the idea that every single person is made in the image of God. The goal isn't just fixing a problem, it's pursuing that big vision of shalom. The helper isn't just a professional, they're a servant steward. And who are you accountable to? Not just a board or your boss, but ultimately to God.
Now hold on. This doesn't mean you just toss out all the modern science and tools. Not at all. The point is to use those tools, but to use them with a different kind of wisdom, aiming for a different kind of goal.
So what does that actually look like? How do you blend the two? Let me give you a perfect example. There's this really common tool in social work called Bronfenbrenner's ecological model. It's just a way of seeing how a person is affected by all the different layers of their environment.
So, this model is basically a map of someone's life, broken down into 5 connected circles. You've got the microsystem, that's your immediate family, your school. Then you've got how those things interact. And it keeps expanding outward, all the way to the macrosystem, which is like the whole culture's values and laws and even how things change over your lifetime. It's pretty comprehensive.
Okay, so you have this map. But what happens when you look at that map through a biblical lens? That's the key difference. A Christian social worker can use the exact same tool, but they add another layer on top. They're interpreting all those systems through big biblical ideas like creation, fall, and redemption. They're asking, how are these parts of a person's life either helping or hindering their journey toward shalom?
So let's bring it back to the social worker themselves. What does all this mean for you, the person on the ground doing the work? Well, it completely changes your posture. It changes how you see your role in the whole story.
Here's the big takeaway. You are not the hero. You're not the savior riding in on a white horse to rescue everybody.
And this way of thinking, you're a servant steward. Think about that. You've been entrusted with a role with certain skills, and your job is to manage them faithfully as a steward for God.
And that means this kind of work, this vocation, requires more than just guts and a big heart. It demands some serious restraint. It demands humility. You have to be teachable. You have to stay within your role and your training. You have to recognize that good intentions or zeal without wisdom can actually do a lot of damage. It's a huge shift from being a rescuer to just being a faithful steward.
Which brings us full circle, doesn't it? Seeing your work as a vocation isn't just some neat theory. It's a challenge. It's a deeply personal question. It stops you from asking, what do I want to be when I grow up? And instead, it makes you ask that question from Ephesians. What good works has God already prepared right now for me to do?